Hello and welcome to AQS Inmate Call. I am your host, Joel Wilborn. Now, normally I would start out this podcast with a telephone call from an inmate. This one is to emphasize a point, something that occurs right around the holidays. Now, this being Christmas, which is a big family holiday, not receiving a call from the loved one causes a lot of concern. And usually, if a person doesn't show up on time or is gone for days or something like this, we assume the worst. And that's a good thing, because then once we discover the truth, if we find out we were wrong, we don't feel so bad. So if your loved one doesn't call you for Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or a birthday, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, any event that you would expect family to be together, if your loved one doesn't call, doesn't notify you in any way, of course it's natural to get a little concerned. And it gets even more frustrating when the institution doesn't let you know that there's something wrong. Your loved one could be in the hospital, or there could be a riot going on in the prison, or a hostage situation. And finding this stuff out should be kind of like when there's a Amber Alert, and everybody's notified right away. If something happens, loved ones should know quickly that something is going on. And that's what we would assume would happen. And so if you don't hear anything, you assume that everything's okay. And if you do turn on the news and hear something, you're thinking, okay, is my loved one all right? But the worst thing, is just not knowing. And to not receive a phone call from your loved one and no heads up, it's a good reason to be a little concerned. So there are times that children, maybe dad calls every Friday at 5 p.m. And if that call doesn't come through, the child's a little disappointed. Especially if he's looking forward to it and he has a really comforting time speaking with his dad. And that's a good chance for the loved one to feel important, to do his job as a dad. There's a lot of fathers who just walk away from families. They could get locked up, they could get killed, they could just run away, or they could show no interest and just do the minimum and just kind of pull themselves out of the family. And for anybody that's come from a good, comfortable family, that having both parents there is a true blessing. It's something that every family should have. And so, email, letters, visitation, telephone calls, these are things that mimic the true family unit. And when you're in a bad situation like that, you make the best of it. So we would normally call the facility, check Twitter, Facebook, talk to friends, other family members, anybody we would think would know something. And if we're not getting the answers we want, it can cause some tension. You know, I'm not saying to the point where a person will go out and commit a crime or anything, but it makes life a little less comfortable. Could cause the person to miss work or not get enough sleep, or health could drop, maybe not eat enough. And we don't consider that when we lock people up. You know, I kind of cringe when I see these long prison sentences, because you're not sentencing just the defendant. You're also sentencing friends and family, and even some community leaders. And yeah, we can throw the blame on the person, but is it really fair to do that? You know, these children who are waiting for this phone call and don't get it, they suffer a little bit of trauma. You know, they lost their parent or their sibling or best friend, and you know the person's alive for the most part. You know, they're not. It's not like they passed away and you're stuck for the rest of your life without them. There is that possibility that the person could come back out, and there is that possibility that you could continue your relationship through these communications. That's the good thing about it, but that's just about it. Because then you're thinking, I really care about this person. I really enjoy being around this person. And now prison is where this person is, and my communication is limited. So if you don't get that phone call, yeah, it matters, you know. And this is not a good time, and that's why I want to emphasize this one. This is, yeah, the inmate call, but we didn't get a call. So what does that mean? And, you know, it could be this, that the person was in school, didn't have time to get out to the phone, or the phone lines were too long, or maybe the person was just too tired. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. And what I want to emphasize here too is something I talked about before with the trauma. You know, we recently had a conviction of a police officer who mistook her pistol for a taser. And, you know, she could be sitting in prison, and you could think, yeah, that's what you deserve. You committed a crime, so you deserve to be there. But what's going through her mind? What is she thinking? Is she thinking, yeah, that guy deserved to die, and I'm glad I got rid of him, and it's worth it to be in here? Or is she thinking, I should have known the difference between a pistol and a taser. I shouldn't have acted so quickly. I could have done things differently. Why did he have to die? Why couldn't I have been more careful? You know, I did all this bad stuff. A lot of things could be thrown through her mind, and she could be going through trauma. A lot of people who are in prison do experience trauma. Not everybody. You know, some people have no problem committing a crime. But there's that few, maybe even one, that it really affects. You know, and we recently had a person, a 26-year-old man, who was sentenced to 110 years for causing an accident that resulted in the death of some people. And, you know, the community jumped out and said, no, 110 years, that's ridiculous. You know, and he was a truck driver, so the other truck drivers said the same thing. And the community banded together, and they went to go for a change, and now they're going to look at it and reconsider this thing. And this is not because he's an innocent man and doesn't deserve to go to prison. It's just because 110 years is a long time. And let's say he actually lived through that sentence and then got out. You know, what kind of life would he live? Is he better off, being in prison for 110 years? Are we safer people because of that? What about his family? Does he feel any guilt for what happened? Now, I'm not going to claim to know what people are thinking. The only person I can accurately predict thoughts for is me. I know what I'm thinking. I know why I did things. And I know I can change them. I have that power. That's the one thing about our independence. We are who we are because we make these decisions. We trust our instincts. We go with our experience. There's reasons why we do things. Now, what if I got into a bad situation and in my mind, the only way to get out of it is to commit a crime? I'm guilty of committing a crime. Except, will anybody ever know that I did not know there were resources that could help me that would prevent me from committing this crime? We could go back to the days where people trusted each other. You have your community, like the tribe, and you could go to your friends, you can go to your family, you can get help, assistance. People were there to listen, to work together. It's a big family. And we're kind of running away from that, where the community works together. And because of that, because we're allowing this to happen, that one little fact that kept us on the straight and narrow is now disappearing. And I would say if we had resources available to help people to find alternatives to crime, I think we'd be able to cut back on a lot. And there are a lot of crimes that have not happened because the people found a resource to help them. But those aren't advertised, and a lot of them go unseen and unheard. But they do happen. Something somewhere causes the person to turn away. There could be a person who could be planning for months to commit a crime, and then something comes along that convinces them that it wasn't worth it and he shouldn't do it. I would like that to be us, family members, friends, the community. I'd like us to do that. I'd like to get a resource available so that if a person felt that, my children aren't doing very well and I can't get medicine and stuff, so I have to go out and sell drugs. And then once I start selling drugs, I'm starting using drugs, and then I have to commit more crimes to keep the drug habit going. I've talked to a lot of addicts, and they didn't get into that situation because they just woke up one morning and decided to do it. There were a series of events that led them to it. And I talked to a lot of people who are murderers, and career criminals and violent crimes. Same thing. They have this life that there's an event that just changes things, and they don't know any other way out of it. And I know when I was in law enforcement, we'd often joke about police officers being laid off because there's no crime. There's not enough crime to keep them employed. Yes, it's bad, but it's also a good thing for society. There's such a low number of crimes committed that you don't need police officers. You don't need prisons. The judicial system could be cut back. What a great thing to happen. The chance of it happening, though, is slim to none, but to think I'm a prison reformist. I want to improve prisons. I want to make them more efficient. It'd be nice if I didn't have that job to do. If American Quitting Society, which is helping people to quit for good, if that didn't need to exist, I'd find other things to do, and I wouldn't have any problem with it. It'd be neat that our children would grow up and never even need a society like that or a company. But for now, we do need it. And if we ever hope to get rid of police officers, instead of defunding the police and trying to find alternate ways to combat crime without, police officers running around out there, why don't we just say, instead of pointing the finger at the police officers, let's just think, well, what can we do to help the police officers to make their job easier? Like we like to say, if you're a police officer and you pull a person over and you go over and approach the car and the person gets belligerent and doesn't want to be arrested and wants to fight and wants to pull weapons and wants to drive away, and then you think if something happens, if the person gets harmed or if the person gets arrested and put in prison, that's the police officer's fault? What if the person hadn't have resisted and just listened to the police officer? Maybe he would have gone to prison, but that's the way our society's set up. Police officers enforce the law, and then we must, comply. And that's just not happening now. So what about the parents? What about siblings? What about community leaders? What are we doing to help the police officers cut back on crime? Do we hire more police officers? Do we build more prisons? Do we put more judges in court? Is that the way to combat this? Or can we find the source of this way of thinking? And to me, I think that would make things a little easier for folks. And to take the, one of the things we have to think about is the reason my friends and loved ones won't call me is because it could be that they got in trouble and that was their phone time was restricted. I won't know this unless somebody tells me that, because my loved one can't call me. I had a friend, and she wanted me to come to an event. So I drove 300 miles, and I walked in, and I was excited. I got to sit with her. And this was one of those where, rather than just sitting in the visitation room, we got to go to an area where we could sit down and take part in the event. Well, one of the officers walked out and told me that my visitation had been terminated because of some crime that I had committed. And I was, completely floored by that. And I asked, what did I do? Oh, we'll send you a letter. And it'll explain everything. And so I thought, well, why didn't somebody tell me before I got here? And this was on a Saturday, and I called on, I think it was a Thursday, and asked, I had some questions I asked, and I said, well, so is everything all set? And they said, oh, yeah, you're clear, you can come on down. And then within 24 hours, I'm blocked, and nobody bothered to tell me. And the officer said, well, we tried to call you, but we couldn't get through. So I go back, and I'm looking through my phone, and I don't see any missed calls, no voicemails, and I'm thinking, what is this woman talking about? So I called another friend of mine who had been incarcerated, and, she was saying, well, maybe, your friend had done something wrong. And, we were just coming up with stuff, but you don't really know until it happens, until you actually get the answers that you see. So, I got the letter, and it said that I was blocked because I had violated one of their policy rules or something. And, it had nothing to do with a crime. which is a reason to terminate a visitation. But what they had accused me of doing was something that had nothing to do with the visitation. So it just seemed really odd. So I put in a complaint with the ombudsman, and after a few months, we were able to resolve it. And they said, this claim that you had violated the policy is not a reason to terminate your visitation. And so I was left, with a void. So I had to do something. They weren't going to apologize. They weren't going to make up for it. To me, they messed up. So I filed several complaints, and I went to work. And as a prison reformist, they wound up changing their policy so that if visitation changed, it wasn't the responsibility of the incarcerated person to notify us. It was the responsibility of staff to notify us. Because like my friend said, I couldn't have notified you in time had I known it anyway, because I can't use the phone, and email doesn't get it there in time, and the mail doesn't get it there in time. So to limit phone is just doesn't make any sense to me. Why even put that on the table for a punishment? Working with families, it really does more good than harm, and cutting back on communication like that, no. Of course, their policy was changed so that they would take that into account now. And I was happy for that, because now, according to their policy, they are required to contact me. They were telling me that it was her responsibility to contact me, and they're not responsible. But after fighting, it's like, no, that's not the case. And there was a slight flaw in their policy that we had to resolve. So I want to take it one step further. I want to fix it so that telephone is not blocked just in case something like that. If my loved one didn't call me because she's confined to her room, she should be allowed to come out and make a call and say, I'm confined to my room for a week and I can't call. And it should be a free call, and it should be allowed to give the person some time, especially if they're going to be traveling a long time to go visit. Visitation was canceled. I don't think she would have called anyway, because there really wasn't a reason to terminate. I think they got me confused with somebody else. Maybe another one of the people on her visitation list. I don't know. They won't tell me. But I was able to make a change for the good. And that's what we do. We fight. We get changes for the good. And we're in the middle of fixing it so that email is a right, phone is a right. Don't mess with it. Visitation shouldn't be messed with either. If you go to my YouTube channel and listen to Candace's story, you'll see that her visitation was cut back, and it really bothered her. And how can this not affect her? How could this not affect her children, her family, her friends? How is this helping her to get back into society? Eventually these sentences will end, and they'll come out, and they'll be living next to you. They'll be riding on the bus with you. They'll be working next to you. What's going through their mind? Are you going to say, yeah, you did that crime, and so you did your time in prison, and now you're out, so you should be a better person? You shouldn't have any more trauma, any more stress, any more hardship in your life because you went to prison and you served a sentence? If we're going to invest money, why invest it on locking a person up and doing nothing and getting nothing, why not take the money and have these people sit down with professionals to try to work with them and find out what we can do to prevent it from happening? A lot of times we can just simply ask, what can we do to keep you from coming back to prison? And the person will give you an honest answer and a workable solution. But we won't know that until we talk to the person. As I said, I'm the one who commits the crimes. I'm the one who does the wrong. So I'm the one who can fix it. And if I need some help, maybe somebody just needs to coax it out of me. What do I need to get the results that we're all looking for? So, during this time of giving, the Christmas season, just think about this. Wouldn't you like to give somebody something that can be used for eternity, for the entire life? Listening to a person, offering some alternatives to something that they might be considering, who they could talk to, and helping to build up supportive relationships with them. This is a good thing, and this will have nothing but benefits in the end. So we need to work with that. We can do it. So this holiday season, I ask that you think about what these people are going through in prison. And if you want to put a person who's down and out and traumatic, probably, in prison and expect them to get better, don't do anything, because you believe in the system and they're going to come out a better person. But if you think we can prevent this from happening in that person's life and then maybe pay it forward to somebody else, if you think it can prevent a crime from happening, then why not just do a very simple thing as to listen to them, to share your experiences in similar situations. It's very simple to give that gift, and that gift is very valuable. Yes, you can give a person a new sponge or a straw or a bar of soap or something for Christmas, but what about just sitting and listening? What about a visit? What about accepting a phone call, sending out an email, and asking, how are you? Is there anything I can do to help you out? To me, that seems very, very good and very effective. And that's why we have American Quitting Society. And once again, I'll ask that you go to my YouTube channel, Joel Wilborn. Take a look at OxyWord. Listen to some of those interviews. And reach out. See if there's anything you can do to help. I mean, maybe they might say they don't need your help, and thank you. At least you reached out, and of course, after they're hanging up on the phone or closing out their email, they'll go back to their cell and think, wow, somebody cares. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in, and ask that you go out and put yourself in somebody's place. What would you want done for you? The golden rule. And offer a helping hand. Just reach out, and you may get a reward yourself. So go out, have yourself a fantastic day, and make wonderful memories for tomorrow.